I didn't particularly see any loopholes. I just really fancied doing it for myself. I just generally thought I could do something for myself and do it better than what I was currently doing in the organisation I was working for. So what I basically did, I took me about 6 months. So I did it when I was literally 20 years old and working as a rep. Bear in mind I started when I was 17, so I did have a few years experience, although at a very young age. I logged every day with the calls and the information, and everything was down to me. Everything was my doing, and it wasn't long. But I actually noticed that there's potentially enough difference between the two, the buying and the selling, to actually generate enough income to pay for a underrunning of a small business, or a business in those days. That's what I did. In that year, I would imagine it was about the summertime, I actually approached a bank manager, got some help from a mate to build a business plan, and then presented that to a bank manager asking for an overdraft facility. In those days, I didn't have any money. I had marginally disposable income from my salary, but not enough to actually start and operate a small business. So I did that. That was 1986. Well, I think we started on the 11th of November 1986 was the day we went live. I'd already invested part of that overdraft facility into a vehicle, a small van, so I could sell my wares and tears and travel around and use as my day-to-day vehicle. And also we invested in a car phone, which in those days was quite an expensive item, but it was actually, bearing in mind I was on the road, I was single on my own, it was a great way to actually have that communication that obviously we needed back, even to these days. It's obviously paramount, but in those days it was needed if you're not going to be in the office. We kicked off work on the 11th of November 1986 from what was then a repurposed school buildings that the local council developed into very small sort of startup business units, and we took one of those as a small temporary measure because the one we had actually intended to go to wasn't ready yet, or the lease wasn't signed, so we had 6 weeks in temporary accommodation with having to work from there. That office in those days was some second-hand desks I managed to acquire through the trade for myself and my mother, actually, who was an instrumental part of me helping to start the business and be my secretary at the time. And they had boxes all around us, pallets. It was an office not much bigger, or a warehouse not much bigger than this, which we just had stock of stationary items that we felt were the day-to-day products available, so that we could deliver them on instantly. And I went out in those days, people probably will be aware, it was door-to-door knocking. It was using a catalogue that was from a wholesale provider that put that catalogue together, and we then bought those products from the wholesale sources, or if you had enough quantity, you'd buy them from the manufacturers. So that's basically what the day looked like. The first day was quite interesting because when we went live, I obviously had told certain people, certain clients, friends, etc., that I was starting the business. There was a bit of a local activity in the press. Not a lot, because of course it was a very small business and you weren't going to generate that much interest, but enough to get us going. And I went out knocking on doors and basically visiting the clients I'd already known or had experience with, and take it from there. And the reasonably interesting was we didn't get a phone call off that new hotline in the office until 5 o'clock that night. And at the moment in time, it was actually my fiance, now wife, still wife, phoning me up to see how the day had gone. And I can remember to this day my mother answering her phone in her very traditional British accent, and it's good morning, this is Northwilts Office Supplies, how may I help you? So it's something that my wife has never forgotten, because she just burst out laughing. But anyway, that was that. So we didn't even get a call the first day of business, but it went on from there to where we are now. I'm not so sure I ever actually wanted to start a business. I think my first business, or my first desire, was actually an estate agency. I fancied myself as selling houses, and that's actually how I did start when I first left school. It wasn't sustainable though, because it meant that at that moment in time I was living away from my parents, so I just couldn't keep up living that life, living away from home at 16 years old. But starting the business, I suppose because I was door knocking on businesses, I was seeing what that might bring people, and how the trappings of success, etc. And being independent was something that I suppose inspired me and made me want to do it. And that's why it was something I felt I knew relatively well. Truth be told, I knew far less than I thought I did at that moment in time, like any business person, I suppose, when you start at such a meagre age. But you learn as you go along, and I was certainly prepared to learn. I was certainly prepared to change the model and change the direction I was taking at any chance I could or needed to. Yes, stationery was something that was my knowledge and experience. I even remember codes for certain products because it was daily commodity that I was and sundries and supplies I was basically supplying. There was equipment in there which then went to develop another business actually, and there certainly was furniture within those sort of that stationery type provider. In approximately 1992, I think it was, the Child Support Agency at the area was set up. Sorry, the whole child support agency came out of the DHSS, and I overheard a conversation when I was in an office for the DHSS saying what they were about to do, and I managed to muscle myself in there and basically win a considerable amount of furniture over best part of 40 offices, which was enlightening to myself about what could happen with furniture. So that's where the journey started, I suppose, into what morphed where we are into now. We did supply all the furniture for that, for the GHSS in our region, that was needed over a surplus to what they actually already had or were using. And it basically went on from there. We then streamlined the business into more furniture orientation. At the same time, we had people like Neat Ideas or Viking and these huge, monstrous, large French and American companies coming into the UK and selling their wares considerably cheaper than we could even buy them for at times, which was made it difficult. So it was a bit of luck, and there was some judgment there about why we had to change the destination and also the type of business what we were basically involved in. So furniture became my desire, became my passion. Furniture then led on to partitions and flooring and suspended ceilings, and those in the early 90s, and we are where we are now. So we basically became time served and experienced in those products and those commodities and those services and those solutions as well. Didn't have any worries. I was stupid. I was naive. I was green. I didn't have a bloody clue. Give you some idea, when I presented my business plan to the bank manager, I can remember it showed a turnover expectancy of something like £84,000 in the first year. So that was the sort of level we're going back, and the sort of the turnover that was required, and enough to give me a salary to proportionate to the requirements of the day. And giving you some idea, at that moment in time, I bought a house for £30,000. So it's all proportionate to where we are now, I guess, in terms of what's needed. I certainly would have done things differently. I would have tried to attract myself into the right business, maybe a more corporate business, to get the experience, and certainly in business management, and grown from there. It's been a journey. It's been one that has been immense fun at times, but it's also come with immense challenges as well at the same time, especially when it's your mortgage on the line, for want of a better word, for every step of the way. The business has been going for 40 years. The business hasn't changed in terms of its ownership or its there's registration of the company. The name has changed a couple of times, but it's always been the same business. Will I do it again? I'd love to have done it again with hindsight and experience, with capital behind you rather than borrowings, etc., which is where we are now, which is a significant change, I have to say, and one that's actually considerably more beneficial and rewarding than having to use money to hire vehicles to take out loans and or overdraft facilities. We don't operate that anymore. We use our own money to fund any future growth or investment. The first negative experience I had was not long after the business had started. We supplied some envelopes, 2 boxes of envelopes, I remember it well, to a local business in the Chippenham area. And we gave them credit facilities, because in those days there was no real easy means of how you actually accept a credit rating, but we gave this particular company credit ratings. And the funny part of it was, about a fortnight later, I received insolvency letters from that company in my own envelopes. But that was the first negative experience of the business. I remember going around to try and get my envelopes back, what was left of them. The first fit-outs that I suppose are memorable to us, and when I was very much on the tools from a project management point of view, from a design point of view, self-taught in design at that period of time when we morphed into that area, I suppose was I worked with British Rail. Now it's changed into the train operating companies and other elements of the railways, but it was actually in those days we first started working with British Rail, and it was quite significant that they gave a small company like us every opportunity to supply fit-out as well as the station. We were also supplying them at the same time, and there was some huge learning curves there. I really do thank that industry immensely for what we learned from them and their skills and their knowledge and experience in management and where we are now, partly.